the agendas are not woven into the movies are now vehicles for the agendas. Hi y'all, SnarkyJay cosplay here. On YouTube, Twitter, what have you, one of the main things that we've complained about when it comes to Disney Marvel and Disney Star Wars is the message. Whatever they decide the message of the week, day, month, year, whatever happens to be, Disney has gotten really heavy-handed in making sure that they drive the point home with literally every single piece of content they produce. Whether the message is girl power, or the very much genuinely devastating effects of racial inequality.
You've got to do better, Senator. You've got to step up.
Disney doesn't exactly have the hand for subtlety anymore. But first, a word from this video's sponsor. It's no secret to folks on this channel that we'd all love to have more control over our favorite fandoms. And while that might be just out of reach, there is something we can have control over: our privacy online, all with the help of NordVPN. NordVPN strives to make the internet a better place for all of us, protecting us from online threats, censorship, and online surveillance. NordVPN is your partner in online privacy without overreach. Right now, every purchase of the 2-year NordVPN plan will receive 4 bonus months on top, plus up to 20 gigabytes daily data voucher when you go to nordvpn.com/snarkyj. NordVPN doesn't track or share what you do online. They protect all your online traffic with state-of-the-art encryption, and their kill switch function is there to make sure your online data is never breached by accident. I am big on my online privacy, from scrolling to find articles to write videos about to ranting and raving on Twitter. I want my privacy protected. NordVPN is constantly monitoring the dark web to make sure that none of my details are ever on sale. And they also check all my downloads for any malware. With 24/7 customer support, protection on up to 10 devices, and dedicated apps for all major platforms, NordVPN is both the hero we need and deserve. So take advantage of this deal. Right now, when you go to nordvpn.com/snarkyj, every purchase of the 2-year NordVPN plan will receive 4 bonus months on top, plus up to 20 gigabytes daily data voucher. Try it totally risk-free right now with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Some would argue that there shouldn't be any subtlety involved when talking about these admittedly heavy-handed subjects. But in my opinion, maybe there shouldn't be subtlety on the floor of, like, Congress or some shit. But when I'm watching a superhero movie, I don't really need to know what political ideals you do or don't live by, because all I want to do is see some guys punch each other and tell a good story like I read in the comic books. That's what I want. I don't feel that it's the job of superhero content to re-educate the public on whatever Disney's current viewpoint on anything is. But that's essentially what's happened. And I want to talk about the fact that there's always been messaging in movies, even in superhero movies, but the problem is that they've now sacrificed good storytelling for the message. And that is the problem with Disney Marvel today. Arguably the best movie in the entire MCU is also the one with the heaviest messaging throughout the entire thing. What's important though is that that movie came out in 2014 when messaging wasn't replacing a good story. And I feel like that might be kind of a hot take, but come on this journey with me. So in 2014, Marvel released Captain America: The Winter Soldier. I've always felt it is genuinely the best Marvel movie in the MCU, not just because I had a terrible crush on Sebastian Stan and I was a huge Bucky fan back in the day. No, it is genuinely a really good movie. The Russos took inspiration from the bank heist scene in Heat, which is one of my favorite movies of all time, to produce the fight on the causeway, which I think is one of the best sequences in the MCU ever. And it genuinely has some of the most solid effects. It's one of the more grounded Marvel movies, and that's probably why I like it, but I also really think that Captain America: The Winter Soldier stands alone as a quality movie. It doesn't need to be part of the MCU. So in the grand scheme of things, when we look look at Captain America: The Winter Soldier in the MCU, it did two things. It basically reintroduced Bucky after coming back and being brainwashed by Hydra and all that stuff. It set up his character arc, which went literally nowhere, but we're not even gonna get into that right now. And it also established the big plot point that Hydra had been sitting within S.H.I.E.L.D. for literally years. Pretty big stuff. But one of the things that I feel like gets lost in discussions about the Winter Soldier are the political implications that came up in the plot of that movie. Project Insight essentially involved deploying 3 linked helicarriers that had an algorithm that could essentially calculate risk and potential threats in people that had not even yet become dangerous. It ended up being that the list was going to figure out anybody who was a threat to Hydra. But what people like Nick Fury intended for it to do was for it to calculate the threat and the risk of potential terroristic threat of terrorists and potential known criminals before they could even commit the crime.
Satellites can read a terrorist's DNA before he steps outside his spider hole. We're gonna neutralize a lot of threats before they even happen.
And that's a big deal to Steve Rogers, who claims
that the punishment usually came after the crime. This isn't freedom. This is fear.
So essentially, at the root of Captain America: The Winter Soldier, if you strip away the Hydra subplot, which kind of lays waste to this whole thing, and you also strip away the superhero element of this guy finding his best friend from 1944 who's been dead and brainwashed and turned into a beautiful metal-armed assassin, if we take away all of that, at the root of Captain America: The Winter Soldier is the topic of government overreach, is the topic of the government being able to assess threats and essentially take out terrorists before a crime is even committed. How far can the government go in terms of protection before it just turns into threatening everybody who could potentially be a problem? All of that political messaging that is very easy to pick apart if you just skim the pretty parts and the sprinkles off the top of it, and yet nobody complained about it, and The Winter Soldier remains arguably the biggest and best movie in the entire MCU, and most people on the internet will agree with that. That's insane. This could very easily be spun red versus blue, just like anything else these days. And when you listen to Captain America's sentiments, for instance, for a guy who fought in World War II, he is surprisingly against this.
For once, we're way ahead of the curve.
By holding a gun to everyone on Earth and calling it protection.
The message is clear that the government shouldn't be that involved and they shouldn't be allowed to hold a gun to everybody in the name of safety. That is very easily politicized. The point is that the whole topic was perfectly woven in to the plot. It didn't become a huge point for Disney Marvel to drive home politically because it actively becomes a situation where Hydra is involved and is turning this situation on its head. So while Steve Rogers, Captain America, might not have agreed with the initial plan, he also doesn't really have to argue against it for what it means because of the fact that Hydra ruins it. And that, in and of itself, means that the political messaging that they could have driven in with a hammer is woven perfectly into the plot. They don't have to preach to you about the dangers of government overreach and interference. They can just show you that eventually bad guys might get involved and 3 helicarriers might end up crashing over DC. They didn't have to hit you over the head with a hammer to drive the point home, and that's what's happening. The movies have always had a message. There's always been an agenda to drive home. The issue now is that the agendas, in some regards, have changed, and not only have the agendas changed, but the agendas are not woven into the movies. The movies are now vehicles for the agendas. The movies are not meant to tell you a good story. The movies are meant to deliver the message. There is no point to it otherwise. There's not going to be any character development. There's not going to be any entertainment value for you because they have a point they have to drive home. They have a statement they want to make, and they no longer feel the need to drive it home in a way that could eventually make you see their viewpoint. If you don't like the product, then obviously it's because you're against the message, because you're a racist, homophobe, bigot, whatever. It's not because you don't want to be hit in the head by this thing, like, why the f are we getting so political right now? I'm trying to see a guy throw a shield. It's because you're a problem. Because you sat down in a theater or with your Disney Plus subscription, you expected to be entertained by superheroes, you know, the guys that they put on the lunch boxes. You expected that, and instead, you got a lesson on American history and politics. I feel like that was an incredibly long-winded way of saying Disney needs to figure out how to tell a good story again. I don't give a shit if you have a message or an agenda, as long as you weave it in cleverly and you're not shoving it down my throat. I might be more willing to hear what you have to say, but subtlety in this society has obviously gone out the window. And that's all from me. I've been SnarkyJay. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. For more SnarkyJay, tune in on Twitch every Tuesday and Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m. EST. You can also check out my Instagram. And if you'd like to support me, this channel, and my content creation, do check out and consider subscribing to my Patreon for exclusive photo shoot sets and content. I will add links to all of those in the description below. And let me know your thoughts on the message in the comments below.